Okay, good morning, everybody, and go live.
We're live.
Said an error. Okay, said an error. Okay, so good morning, everybody, and welcome to Environmental Social Justice. We seem to have a little bit of an issue with getting on live. Pardon me?
We just have issues in general. So yeah.
In general, I mean, this is how we roll. But welcome, Keith Malone of the California Fuel Cell Partnership, where today we're going to talk about hydrogen. We are huge fans of hydrogen here at ESJ. We understand electric is important, but we are all fans of energy diversification and the need for multiple sources. So Keith, please tell us everything you're working on and how awesome you are.
That is a very lovely introduction and a burdensome one at the same time. Thank you. How about this? I'll start off with this. There's a lot that's been happening with hydrogen, especially in the last year. COVID, which we thought might have slowed things down, actually accelerated the pace of activity well beyond anyone's kind of imagining. So it caught a lot of people off guard, including a lot of insiders. We knew a lot was going to happen starting last year, and it was far more than we ever had considered. So how about that to start off with?
Well, go ahead.
Well, Keith has been pretty busy. As far as COVID time has been concerned, he's on the circuit, boy. Whether he's talking to the legislature or, conducting community meetings online, sending emails. I don't know how many emails I get on both my personal email, my government email. He has not let this issue fall to the wayside, especially now during COVID. So he's on the scene.
That's good to know. One of the things when we were talking about this, energy diversification is important. We need multiple sources. I'm a huge fan of hydrogen ever since I saw Alan Alda talk about it on Scientific American in the 80s. So I go way back on this.
You're old, yeah.
Thank you, Joel.
We need a lot of tools in the decarbonization toolbox.
Yes.
That's really what it comes down to. If you look at our membership within the Fuel Cell Partnership, we focus primarily on hydrogen mobility, fuel cell electric vehicles, if you will, hydrogen fueling infrastructure, hydrogen production. But if you look at our membership, government and private industry, many of them work both mobility pathways, both battery electric and fuel cell electric. So really embedded within our DNA is a recognition that you need all of the above, that you cannot get to that zero emission future unless you utilize all those kind of decarbonizing tools together.
Absolutely. And that's, so one of the things, electric is awesome. We like electric. We're not against it, but there is limits to it right now. The range isn't that great. It takes a long time to charge. They're expensive. I see hydrogen, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I see hydrogen really taking over for long transport, for vehicles and logistics and transferring goods. Is that a correct assumption that people could focus on that? Because there is a longer range when you have hydrogen.
In the heavy duty realm, when it comes to, say, buses and trucks, and we won't even get into aviation or maritime or whatnot, but generally speaking, there is this sense that fuel cell electric trucks, fuel cell electric buses are going to be in certain locations where they perform best. Long range, bigger payloads, and extreme weather conditions. Fuel cell technology performs really well in extreme cold and extreme heat. That's why out in Coachella Valley, you have Sunline Transit. Their bus fleet is going to be predominantly fuel cell. They will have battery electrics. That's why Las Vegas's transit agency is going fuel cell electric, because they have, when it's summertime and it's hot as Hades, they need a technology that's going to perform well for them. But I think I also want to be clear that it's oftentimes about it's about what works in this case. What's the context? Because in some cases where we think fuel cell electrics might work or battery electrics might work, it may be just the opposite. Sometimes it just depends, and it's situational. But generally speaking, the long haul, the bigger stuff, it's going to be hydrogen and fuel cell electric technologies.
You know, I didn't. Go ahead.
Oh, Keith, one of the things that I really, that's a point of contention for lots of people as they learn about fuel cell technology and, you know, even personal vehicles like the Toyota Mirai, is the charging infrastructure. Let's talk about where it's come from to where it is now, which hasn't really grown a whole lot. You know, I live near LAX, and the closest charging station is still near the airport, which is still 8 miles away, which from Windy would, you know, be 25 miles away. And Joel, you know, he's out there. There's probably one fuel charging station in between there. Let's talk about the feasibility of that. Because I think that's going to be a really big point of contention as people try to decide and what the legislature and what Fuel Cell Partnership is trying to do to alleviate that gap.
So the partnership, just to kind of just real quick background, we developed kind of the foundational plan about how we roll out the fueling stations for fuel cell electric cars. That was in 2012. The market really launched commercially with Toyota and the introduction of the first generation Mirai back in 2015. So the first stations really started to come online in 2014. First retail stations where you can go in, swipe a credit card, get in, get out, move on. Prior to that, and even still at that time, you had a few what we call demonstration stations. You go in, punch a code, really awkward, just really wasn't where we wanted it to be, where it should have been. So for us, our heavy lift is really with the fueling infrastructure, kind of low scale. And you know, our battery electric siblings, much easier. Some of the wires are already laid. You can charge at home. It's easier to install. But as we scale up, we see the ease and the costs coming down. In fact, we're already seeing that. And in fact, the Air Resources Board is releasing a study soon. We've already seen the draft. It's public, that says we can get to a self-sufficient fueling network for cars in 10 years. We need another infusion of money, but we've seen that infusion of money will bring in about a 90% private sector investment contribution.
Now, how does this work when it comes to the convenience? Because everybody likes convenience. We live in the world where we want things delivered on our door in 30 minutes or less, or it's free. So you're talking about great for the charging stations and all this kind of stuff, but we don't even have an infrastructure in place to allow people to charge at home without starting potentially fires or having to rewire their own homes. So how does this all come together?
So I should say, when we're talking about hydrogen stations in general, we're usually, especially for the cars, we're talking about hydrogen pumps and equipment at existing gas stations. Okay. It's a gas station model because you're filling up in 3 to about 7 minutes. That matches the business case for those gas station owners. Hydrogen becomes their just transition, their on-ramp to the green future. For some, if they have a large enough footprint, they'll include charging, fast charging. That's really what they're going to need. That has its own challenges. I mean, I want to be clear, both pathways have their challenges. For us, it's at low scale. So right now in California, we have about nearly 50 light duty stations. It's not a lot, but we recently had in late 2020 funding for more than 100 stations by the Energy Commission. They had delayed funding for about 4 years.
So one thing which I think is really interesting is that this would be based off of the model that we currently have. as opposed to what we're anticipating happening with the electric vehicles is you do them at home, you let them charge overnight. It's like we're really not changing the lifestyle, we're just changing the footprint of what your car is actually doing on a daily basis.
Right. And remember, there's going to be challenges. You mentioned some of them. Some people, like I was talking to someone from a major utility, he was driving a fuel cell car, and I was like, have your colleagues not stabbed you in the back? Because a lot of the utilities still kind of see battery electrics as their savior, and we keep kind of nicely going, maybe you need to look at both, because I think there are opportunities. But that said, he was like, no, I couldn't retrofit my home. And there may be cases about that, but generally speaking, especially in those areas where you have multi-unit dwellings that are older and it's difficult to install charging for everyone, there may not be room for street parking. Usually where you have high density, you have high density.
Yeah.
And so those parking spaces become really important. I'll also add, fuel cell electric vehicles are really good because increasingly we have people who want pickup trucks and SUVs. So for the bigger end of the light duty market, that's where we're going to excel. And also super commuters. So for example, I'm pretty sure there are super commuters coming in and out of Coachella Valley into LA and Orange County on a hellacious daily or near daily commute. And fuel cell electric vehicles are really going to be, I think, key for those folks, because you can run the onboard systems and not really have it diminish your range that much. So
one thing to also add, though, with respect to electric vehicles, where we're heading for that is the stress on our existing grid. Because right now we're dealing with, brownouts, blackouts, the shutoffs. Our existing grid can't even handle what we're doing daily right now.
Sure.
And in a few years, when people are going to be required to get only electric cars, only new cars can be electric, we have a long way to go to meet that goal. And if we want to meet that net zero, this is a great way to do it. I mean, again, I do love hydrogen. I love the Mirai. It's a beautiful car. When Keith, you were actually the first one to tell me about the Mirai when we first spoke about a year ago. And I thought that was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my life. So I think there's room for both parties. And personally, I just don't understand why people are kind of one or the other, or, only electric. And I think there's room for everybody to play in this particular sandbox. And I think it makes sense too.
I think hydrogen has this real interesting role to play. I mean, especially as a grid balancer, one way or another, whether we use the hydrogen for energy storage, or whether we use that kind of grid balancing to make hydrogen for fuel or other industrial input.
Yeah.
So I think it starts to get really, really interesting. And we're beginning to see a lot of projects around the globe. Here in California, when it comes to kind of the grid and public utilities, we're only now beginning to see them start to explore it. The Energy Commission has been working on the mobility side for a while. On the grid side of it, they're only now beginning to take a look at it. We're seeing for the first time they're having an information session, talking to experts coming up on, I think, next week on the 27th. It should be on our website. I'll have to make sure that we've got it there. I was about to say, so in other parts of the world, you're beginning to see a quicker uptake. I mean, let me step back a minute and say LADWP has at least already figured out that hydrogen is what they're going to need.
That's good.
To help supply power to Los Angeles, using gas turbines up in Utah at the Intermountain Project. And that also includes energy storage, salt caverns. We don't really have those in California. Some of that storage, like you said, with SoCal Gas is going to come in the natural gas pipeline system.
Yeah. I mean, it's already there. SoCal Gas is making leaps and bounds with green hydrogen. So using renewable energy to create it. Hopefully we'll be able to meet with them September, October when they launch their hydrogen house. Going back to the gas station model, though, one of the things I wanted to bring up, first of all, it makes absolute sense. They already have the tanks in the ground. You just replace the petroleum with the hydrogen, you're good to go.
That's
But it's the cost, but also most importantly, and we talk about the social justice aspect, most gas stations or areas that are going to store large amounts of petroleum are in lower income areas, and that leaks. Gasoline will leak out, petroleum will leak out. This is a contaminant. This will cause their cancer, known carcinogens. By removing the fossil fuel element and replacing it with hydrogen, you're only helping a community. Because if hydrogen releases, it's just going to mix with oxygen. You're going to have water vapor, rain, whatever happens. You're not going to have petroleum. You're not going to have vapors or gases or people getting sick. So that's another aspect that I'm a huge. Why are you laughing at me, Joel?
Because you said vapors, and I just, yeah.
Vapors. Yes. Thank you, Joel.
Yeah.
Joel makes fun of me a lot. I'm so used to this. I've known him for way too long.
I'm an equal opportunity person. I make fun of everybody.
That is true. You do.
But in a good way.
Exactly. It's all with love. All with love.
I'm going to challenge.
You would know if it's not. So yeah, that's fine. Anyway.
But yes, I would just wanted to bring up the contamination aspect.
Probably.
Oh, sorry.
I'll just add, probably for the foreseeable future, you'll see most of the hydrogen storage and equipment above ground.
Yeah, that makes sense.
For safety considerations, hydrogen is certainly flammable, just like natural gas, just like gasoline, any form of energy. It just has different properties. And so for hydrogen, what you want to do is it's 14 times lighter than air. So you really want to just give it any opportunity to escape in case there is some form of an incident. You don't want to aggregate it. You don't want to keep it. So that's all. Eventually, yeah.
I was going to say on the, I believe it was when I watched it on Scientific American as a kid, because that show fascinated me. People were talking about, oh, well, hydrogen can explode. And oh my God, the cars will explode. Well, so does petroleum. Petrol will explode as well. And they did a side-by-side comparison where they set fire to the gas tank of a gasoline car and it blew up as expected. But then with the and please correct me if I'm wrong, because this is going back to like childhood memories. They set fire to the hydrogen tank of a hydrogen car, and all it did was stream out a flame out back. The car itself did not blow up. Is that an accurate representation, or did they kind of maybe?
It's fairly accurate. There is the possibility, if there is a hydrogen flame, it could ignite something else on the car, depending on where the flame is emanating from. But so one of the challenges safety-wise with hydrogen is it tends to burn invisibly. You'll see kind of waves like you do in the desert when there's heat. You'll see that.
Okay.
So if you do see a flame, that means there's other things in that, or it's not hydrogen. Or yeah. So, but that said, I have a colleague, Jennifer, who is a national expert in training firefighters and emergency responders to deal with vehicles. Once we train firefighters, they're good to go. In fact, some of them have said quietly they'd rather see a fuel cell electric vehicle than anything else. I mean, it's important to remember these cars have undergone all the same safety checks any other car would around the globe, including armor-piercing bullet tests. Oh yeah, you can't make this stuff up. And a colleague of mine who works at an automaker has said before, he goes, the safest place to be inside a fuel cell car in case of an accident is inside the tanks.
Doesn't sound very comfortable, but okay.
No, it's not. It's a little cramped, but
little tight.
And you might asphyxiate because of the hydrogen.
So I know we've mentioned a Toyota Mirai quite a bit, but Honda Clarity was also one of the first ones to come out. And I think, what are some of the other ones? Because those are the two that I know of.
So the third one is the Hyundai Nexo.
Oh, that's right. That's a good looking car.
And I've been driving that one for about the last year.
Okay.
May I ask what the average cost of these cars are, just for the general public to know?
Oh, hopefully my automaker colleagues will not kill me. Generally speaking, you're looking at high 40s to mid 50s about. Now that's without any of the benefits. That's without the free fuel. that automakers give you for 3 years, worth up to about, some cases, $15,000, depending on whether you buy or lease. You've got the state rebate, about $4,500 in a rebate check. You have the federal tax credit. Oh my gosh, you get the HOV lane sticker, assuming you get the HOV lane sticker and you get the rebate check if you're under a certain income level. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Fair enough.
So altogether, I mean, it's a sweet deal.
It's
I mean,
a
there are
great
people
deal.
who are snapping them up. I met a couple who bought the second generation Mirai, beautiful car.
Oh.
And I'm like, how did you find it? Did you previously drive a fuel cell electric car? They're like, no, we went on a website that said a great deals website, something like that. And it was listed on there as a great deal.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
I think I have to look into that.
It's going to come down to the PR and the marketing to really kind of get people to start exploring other options. Because right now, every dollar is being thrown at electric, plug-in electric, hybrid electric. I mean, that's kind of those, PHEV, whatever, all the buzzwords are right there. And until you actually start seeing these cars on the road outside of California, that's the other thing. So, and the infrastructure needs to be there. There's so many variables. It's going to take time.
Right. And for us, like I said, we have it's trying to get people to remember with both pathways, different timelines, different strategies, different strengths, different weaknesses, different challenges. And a lot of times people try and do these apples to apples comparison. And I'm like,
Can't do that.
For us, yeah.
I was going to say, my friend Greg Gill, who's a car expert, he asked a question, hasn't Toyota announced that it's end the Mirai project? Are they ending the Mirai or is it moving forward?
Maybe he's talking about the first generation Mirai and they're coming out with it. The second generation Mirai is out there. Toyota is very committed to fuel cell technology. And in fact, Hyundai is equally as committed. They kind of demonstrated in different ways. But, and we're now beginning to see the last couple of years, China start to step up. And we're only seeing little bits and pieces. But also, it's important to remember that except for VW, because they've pretty much even pulled Audi out of fuel cell technology, but they still have it. They still have agreements with Hyundai and Ballard Power Systems on fuel cell tech. But that said, almost every automaker has the technology and has not walked away from it.
So going back to when Joel was bringing up finance and infrastructure, would it be a fair statement to say that we need these finance, everyone's jumping on the environmental bandwagon lately and all the finance guys are hopping in with ESG.
Yeah.
Would it be a fair assessment to say it'd probably be a pretty good investment for infrastructure of hydrogen? Put your money in that.
I think so. Yeah. I think one of the challenges right now, and it's been made clear, so we've had, just so you know, globally, 30 national hydrogen strategies come out around the globe. The first was, for the most part, Japan in 2017. The EU last year, Germany came out with their plans. One of the key things that's being said over and over again, especially the analyses out of McKinsey and Company, Bloomberg, NEF, Wood Mackenzie and others, is we can get to, and even UC Irvine, which did a renewable hydrogen production study, came out last year. And they all said we can get to low-cost renewable hydrogen, but with the right policy foundations, the right market signals that say to the private sector, come in and invest. And it's like,
come on, Joy,
we need those. Yeah, that's kind of it now. We are getting ready to release our truck vision document in a few weeks, probably August 2nd. It's a vision document. We set a couple of numbers in there, a couple things to trigger people, get them interested. But one of the key things is we need to invest now, absolutely now.
Yeah, investors have to I mean, I love electric, it's great, but we need to focus on diverse energy resources. I mean, I cannot say that enough. We can't just have one source. We have to have a multitude of options. Keith, just as we close out for today, what would you love to see happen in the next 3 to 5 years? What would make you the absolute happiest with respect to fuel cells?
I would like to see California add additional policies. We've got some good policies so far, but we need more. Some predictable policies that encourage investment, like an investment tax credit. I'd like to see the federal government really start to, they're talking about upping the amount of funding they're doing for fuel cell electric buses. And I will say they're the real indicators of where the technology is going. They're a really good sign. I use a negative phrase. They're the canaries in the mine. They're showing us really what's happening with the technologies, what it is to scale up. That's the challenge. But I think from the federal government, some additional policy signals, similar to what we're doing here in California, that really encourages renewable hydrogen production. That increasingly is the next big thing. We've been trying to synchronize vehicles with fueling infrastructure, and now we need to add the third leg to the stool, which is synchronizing hydrogen production. And that's going to have an effect in many other ways, many other industries. Mobility is pretty much, we're out the starting gate.
That's fantastic. So Joy, you've got a homework assignment now.
Oh, believe me, I'm already working on this homework assignment. We've got infrastructure legislation out there to help do the hydrogen infrastructure, create more charging stations, and create more outlets for people to use hydrogen, whether it's cities and municipalities with busing and transport, or just having more fuel cell stations set up and down the state to make it easier, make an easier decision for people to buy hydrogen vehicles. So yes, I'm working on it, and Keith is right by my side, believe me. If ever I dream that I don't want to handle fuel cell in a week, here comes Keith, boy. He's here to put you back and whip you back in shape. I love this guy.
That is fantastic. Well, guys, thank you so much. Joel, do you have any final words, parting words?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, thank you so much. This has been hugely educational. Hopefully we will have you back in a few months to talk about the progress. Hopefully we will have more options for fuel cells, for charging stations, for vehicles on the road, and see this grow exponentially, because this is a hot market. This is.
We like to think so.
On that, guys, have a wonderful day. Enjoy your rest of the week and take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Good talking with you.
Good talking to you too.